It's a mystical world out there, and today we're going to be talking about dreams and premonitions. A dream that I've had of the Cascadia megaquake in particular is what I'm going to be talking about. So, first off, I just want to apologize real quick. I am not used to talking. I am someone who probably says 5 words a day on average, and I'm going from that to trying to create this channel and this podcast and whatever you want to call it. And this has been in the works for quite a while now, so I'm just going for it, and I just want to apologize. So, anyway, getting back into things. So, if you don't know what this is, and I didn't know what this is, the Cascadia megaquake, I didn't know until I moved to the Pacific Northwest for a time, and that's when I found out about it. But I don't know. I was very bad in school, so maybe I missed this, but as far as I know, on the East Coast, we don't really learn about this. At least I don't remember learning about it or about Mount Rainier, like the volcanoes and if they're active or not. We just didn't really, at least from my knowledge, we didn't learn about that. So anyway, the Cascadian megaquake, if you didn't know, it refers to a massive megathrust earthquake, and it's expected to occur along the Cascadia subduction zone. So that's like a 700-mile long fault, and it stretches from Northern California to Vancouver Island. And basically, this fault is capable of producing a magnitude 9.0 or greater earthquake. So, yeah, if you didn't know what that is, it's going to be this huge earthquake. So, to get this question out of the way, did I predict it? Do I know when it's going to be? No. But what I will say is I had a dream that was very profound and it stuck with me. And it was just one of those dreams that I've held on to and I just haven't forgotten. And I've had a few premonition type dreams before. So this one, I made a note of it and I'm going to share it with you. Hopefully it helps somebody maybe with their anxieties. Basically, I do not think that it's going to happen anytime soon. However, I don't believe that you can predict things like that. Okay, so basically, I am someone who has had premonition type dreams, but I tend to think that with premonition dreams, you have them right away. If you know that something's going to happen, you usually have it maybe a lot or the day before it happens, and you just kind of like know, there's like a knowing to it. This really wasn't like that, and I've had this dream, I think 2 years ago now. I can't be sure. So years have passed and nothing's happened. Now, there has been some natural disaster stuff that has happened over there in the Pacific Northwest, but it's nothing like this. So this Cascadia megaquake, if you didn't know, it's going to be the worst natural disaster in U.S. history. And there's going to be I think these are the low numbers, but it's between 13 to 25,000 casualties, 30,000 injuries, huge structural damage. It's going to be huge. So it's called the big one. It's going to be, as I said, 9.0 or higher. It's similar to the scale of the 2011 Tohoku Japan earthquake. Sorry. Coastal areas could experience up to 5 to 7 minutes of violent ground shaking, and the quake will likely trigger a massive tsunami with waves reaching to up to 100 feet. So this could happen at any day, and basically it could be the whole fault shakes, and if that happens, then that's what's going to be like the biggest impact. But if half of it shakes, then it's obviously going to be less damage. So basically it's overdue. So some people are really worried about this, and some people aren't really worried because, well, basically, so the southern portion of the fault from Northern California to Southern Oregon is more active, with an average reoccurrence interval about 240 years. By this metric, the southern section is specifically considered more than 80 years overdue. So I think they're more concerned about Oregon, Northern California, than the huge one that is the whole fault shaking from Northern California to Vancouver Island. And it says here, seismologists emphasize that overdue is a statistical term, not a countdown. Intervals between past earthquakes have ranged from as short as 200 years to as long as 1,000 years. So really, this could happen. And then that's the smaller earthquake. The bigger one, the last time since that event, the megathrust earthquake 9.0, it occurred on January 26, 1700. So as of early 2026, it has been 326 years since its last event. And geological records indicate that these earthquakes happen roughly every 240 to 500 years. So really think about that. 240 to 500. We are at currently 326 as of 2026. So the probability is experts estimate that there is approximately a 37% chance of a magnitude 7.1 earthquake and higher chance of the smaller quake and a 10 to 15% chance of the megathrust quake occurring with the next 50 years. So that's not zero. That's not 1% to it's 10 to 15% of something like this just completely devastating that area. And again, I hadn't heard about it till I moved there, and it's scary. I mean, it could happen any day, and it's something I wouldn't be too afraid of dying from necessarily as surviving. So if that makes any sense. But basically, this dream that I had, and again, take it with a grain of salt. And I should have probably started off with the dream. I'm sorry to have bored you with statistics and stuff. Basically, do not take this seriously. I'm not saying that it's going to happen when it's going to happen in my dream, but I'm just sharing this dream that I had because maybe somebody had a similar type dream. And who knows, maybe one person might hear this and be like, oh, I'm glad this person shared. So that's why I'm sharing it and putting it out there. So basically, I had this dream a couple years ago, and in this dream, I was in a house that I was living in around 2006, I want to say, and I was on the East Coast, and it was snowing. It was a horrible, horrible snowstorm, and in this dream, I felt like I was like a lot older. I want to say 40 to 50 years old. I felt like I was in my older years, and I decided I wanted to go travel around, so I traveled around the country. And, I guess before I should say this, before I went to travel around, I looked up in the sky and there was a northern lights. And now I'll get back to that at the end of my dream. But I did see the northern lights, and it was very vivid, and it was where I was on the East Coast, which is not a place that you would usually see the northern lights. And there was a lot of snow, so I made a note of it. So it was January, and the last time this event happened was I believe it was in January, as I just said. So basically, yeah, January 26th. So we can guess that this dream that I had, it was so I don't know, maybe it was saying that it's going to be, let's see, I'm in like my 30s now, so maybe 10, 20 years from now in the winter. Again, please take this with a grain of salt. I am not telling anybody anything, but what I am saying is I do feel like it's more in the future. Again, no one can predict it. I could say, oh yeah, it's going to be 20 years from now and it happens tomorrow. Nobody knows, and nothing has ever happened since, but it's just interesting, okay? It's interesting things to note. And again, it could happen at any time. So basically, I was traveling around the country, and then I decided to go, since I was in the area, I decided to go stop by a place that I used to live, a place called Port Angeles, Washington, on the very tip of Washington, So I went to go visit there, and there was a huge gate. And I didn't recognize any of the landscape, and it was very hard to drive through it all. And there were just a lot of trees down, and this maybe feels like it was like way after this earthquake happened, weirdly enough. And who knows, maybe I was in a different lifetime, I don't know. But there was like rolling meadows and stuff where there used to be a lot of trees, and I'm assuming this is way after maybe this caused a lot of landslides because there was just a lot of rolling green hills, and the forest was more further back than what it was. And there was a gate, and there was a man protecting the gate from the town, and he was a young man. And I just want to note, like, it's weird, but like everyone in the town was like younger and like 18 to like 10 to 18 sort of ages. And I asked, can I go in there? Like, I used to live there, and I just want to see what it's like. And he just looked very stoic, and there was just this very stoic, like somber, like deep somber feeling in the whole dream, in the area. It was just very somber. And he finally agreed. He let me drive through, so I drove in. And I was just, there was like a point where I couldn't drive anymore, and there was like no more town. And I just remember being like astonished, and I just started to go up this path, and it was like up a hill and down into, and they went down into like this little, it was like an old, looked like it was like a farmed area or something, like not a farm area. Okay. So there was like a lot of trees in the, and like a gated, trees in the distance, and there was like a gated area. I can't really describe that well, but basically there was like a gated area, in a clearing, a small clearing surrounded by trees, and there was an eagle sanctuary. It was a bald eagle sanctuary, and they were bald eagles that had been injured. And it was just them. There was nothing else. I didn't see a house or anything like that. It was just like this huge yard, like massive yard, and half of it was like trees, and the other half was like a gate. And these eagles were like down by the gate, like they were on the ground, and I was able to pet them through the gate. And they were like, I love bald eagles, so I was like I stayed with them for a while. And I didn't think about this, but I think that the injured bald eagles probably represent the United States. I want to say they probably represent, like, either by the time this happens, maybe the United States isn't the United States anymore. Maybe it destroys the United States. Maybe I don't know what that symbolizes, but I found it very odd that there was bald eagles, and they were not able to fly, and they were on the ground. And I think it just made me look up. I think I did look up that like would it like how would it, would it ruin the United States? So I did look it up, and it says that it would be the worst natural disaster in US history. I think it would be even worse than Katrina. Not as, you know, probably definitely not as bad as Yellowstone, but nobody's expecting Yellowstone to go anytime soon. Yellowstone's numbers are definitely not the numbers of this as far as the probability of it happening. So it would cause unprecedented regional devastation and a significant long-term national economic strain. So it definitely would have a huge effect on the country, similar to like Katrina. And so I don't know. I mean, again, it's anyone's interpretation. My interpretation is it could be, because it was just so significant. So anyway, and then I get the dream's coming to an end. So basically, I continue on the path, and I get to the end of this hill, and I'm on the coast, and I can see the ocean, and there's just all these kids, and they're like, again, their ages are like from 10 to 18. They're like high school kids and middle school kids and whatever. And they're just trying really hard to make a life for themselves. So it's just a very somber feeling, and they're all very serious, and it looks like they have all faced a lot of loss and hardship. So I don't know. Does that mean that it's going to be the next generation? I don't know. It's anyone's guess. So, I mean, they did look um they did look young, so I don't know. Could be, but there was no indication of what generation it could be. The only thing about this dream that really stood out to me was the fact that it was wintertime. So I don't know if winter is like the time for earthquakes, because if you look back, like the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, it was one of the deadliest disasters in recorded modern history, and it killed an estimated 230,000 people. It was a huge earthquake, and it happened on the western coast of the Indonesian island of Sumatra on morning of Boxing Day. Boxing Day is like, I think it's like December 26th. I think it's England's Christmas, basically what Boxing Day is. So yeah, again, in the wintertime. So maybe that dream was telling me that it is going to be on the wintertime. I don't know. So, and then another thing is that I was going to say is the Northern Lights. I thought that was very strange, and I want to get into that. So maybe looking back, maybe what I saw wasn't Northern Lights, but something called earthquake lights, EQL. Some reports describe unusual luminous phenomenon known as earthquake lights appearing near seismic activity. While these can look like auroras, they are believed to be caused by electrical charges released from stressed rocks in the crust rather than solar activity. So maybe what this dream is just saying that it's going to be way in the future, and that there's going to be lights in the sky maybe related to it, and that it's probably going to be in the wintertime. And so, I mean, I did look it up, sorry, a little bit more. It just says a few recent 2025 studies have explored whether solar heat might affect rock properties or groundwater movement, potentially acting as a secondary trigger for fault lines that are already under extreme stress. So there's just no, but there's no real, basically what it says is that there's no correlation between the northern lights and earthquakes. We did see this, some of the pictures that I'm going to be using for my videos is pictures of the northern lights that I was able to take in New York and in upstate New York and in Pennsylvania, and it was seen pretty much all over the East Coast over here. And it was very unusual because people over here like were never used to that growing up, or maybe they just didn't have cell phones back then, so they couldn't really get good pictures of it. But from what I hear, it's not really a common occurrence. So again, I'm really sorry. My speaking is not the best, but I just want to like put this out there. And I did make a video on this premonition video, and I think I didn't stress enough that there really is no way to know. If you're watching videos of people who were saying like, oh, it's going to happen tomorrow, or, it's going to happen at this time, I just don't think anybody really knows. And then again, like maybe there is somebody in your area who's getting thoughts and feelings like that this is going to happen, or like, oh, I'm starting to get, they live in the area and they're starting to get worried or whatever. But something like this, I think it's really, really hard to predict, and it's no way to live in fear. And this led me to a whole dive on premonitions, and I can do more videos on that. All sorts of sort of dreams. So I looked into a little bit of 9/11 and people who had similar type dreams and things like that. So there was so basically there was an article and of people I found of all these types of people who have had dreams of like 9/11. Like I'm just using that as an example. But there's a lady named Bonnie McEney. Her husband, he was killed in the 9/11 attacks, and she recalls his feelings of dread leading up to the disaster. So he knew, he had a feeling this was going to happen. And he warned his wife. He warned her that something horrible was going to happen. And he had these vivid nightmares of like buildings collapsing and people trapped in fires. And his premonitions were so unsettling that he regularly reminded Bonnie to cherish every moment they spent together. And so that she put that all in a book. She made a book called Messages, Signs, Visits, and Premonitions from Loved Ones Lost on 9/11. It's just tons of other accounts I'm seeing. Again, it seems to me that people who have premonitions usually have them very, at least for me too, like my experience of it is if something's going to happen, I usually get that feeling like very soon before it happens. And it's different than anxiety. It is different than anxiety. I think people get those two mixed together, and they're easy to get mixed together because they give you the same feelings of dread and worry and makes you feel horrible. But they're different, and if you really pay attention, they do have different feelings. There's more of like a knowing with this stuff. Like with the stream that I had, it was just, to me, it didn't feel like a warning. It just felt like an insight of some sort. Like maybe, but it did to me, again, take it with a grain of salt. Could happen tomorrow. There's no way to know. But to me, it did feel like something distant in the future. Again, I was older. I was like in my 40s or 50s. So to me, it feels like this is going to be something, way, way off in the future. And I think so much so that this country is probably not even going to look the same. This country won't be, I think, what we know it to be. That's just my feeling on it. So again, lots of people. So there's this man named Barrett Naylor, a Wall Street executive and a former parapsychology skeptic. He says his attitude completely changed on the 26th of February, 1993. And he basically had a feeling after he stepped off the train at the Grand Central Station that he should turn around and go home. And then, he listened to his gut that day and he was able to avoid the World Trade Center bombing. But it was 8 years before the 9/11 attacks. And he got the same feeling actually on 9/11. So some people don't know, but there was actually a bombing at the World Trade Center before the planes crashed into it. And so people, tons of people had feelings about, and again, they're just, when they do have these feelings, they're very, it's different than anxiety because it's just more of like a knowing, like you just do it, like you just know, like you just know not to go that way. Like, sometimes maybe you're driving somewhere and you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to go this way. But it's just like, you don't think about it. You don't worry about it. You just know, and you just have this knowing and you just go the other way. And like later you find out there was like an accident that way or something. It's just more like a knowing. And it's hard to describe, but I've had premonition dreams, and I guess I can get into more of that on another video, but this one is, or podcast, wherever you're listening to this. So basically, I guess that's all I had to say. I just really wanted to focus in on that dream, and hopefully you get something out of it. I really don't have any much more things to say about it. People have all sorts of premonitions about natural disasters and stuff, but it's no need to worry. It's just, going with your gut and working on your intuition. And I think there'll be signs. They definitely will be, in ways that you're not used to. And it's not just a dream where it's just like catastrophic and it's just terrifying and it's like a movie. I think it's going to be like that, but it's going to be more like a knowing. I can't describe it any other way. So anyway, I'm going to stop here. Thank you so much for being here. Stay tuned. I'm going to try to make more videos and podcast episodes and things like that. So thank you for being here again, and see you in the next one.